I would like to welcome you to Gainesville High School to talk about our rezoning meeting. My name is Kirk Tapley. I'm one of the assistant principals here at Gainesville High School. I'm going to pass it over to Ms. Johnson now, and thank you all for coming tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Tapley, and thank you to your staff for all your help in helping us get it set up today. And I want to thank all of you for being here tonight. My name is Jackie Johnson. I'm Director of Communications for Alachua County Public Schools. I want to introduce some of the folks who are also here tonight. From our school board chair is Tina Certain. Our school board vice chair on the other side is Dr. Leonetta McNeely. And we have our board members, Dr. Sarah Rockwell, Kay Abbott, and Diane McGraw. We do, again, want to thank you for being here to share your input on rezoning. I want to give you a little bit of information on how the meeting tonight is going to go. We're going to have a quick presentation from Dr. Edwards about rezoning. Then we are going to take some input from you. You can see we have a microphone here. Once I give the signal, anybody who would like to speak can begin lining up behind the microphone. You'll have 3 minutes to address the board. You can see a timer up front. It will be counting backwards, so you'll be able to tell how much time that you have left. If you have input that you would like to share, but you don't want to share it at this meeting, that is absolutely fine. You have a couple of other options. At the front table when you came in, you might have seen this input form. You can fill that out and leave it at the front table when you leave. We also have a special email box set up for rezoning input, rezoning@gm.sbac.edu. You can send your email to that. The board members can see all of that. The team that's working on rezoning can see all of that. We'll also be recording tonight's meeting. We'll be collecting the input forms, and that way we've got several different ways of recording what it is you have to say about the rezoning process. Once we are done with the public input, we will also ask you to respond to a very quick survey. So at this point, I am going to turn things over to Dr. Edwards.
Good evening, everyone. As Ms. Johnson has said, I'm Dr. Edwards, the Chief of Equity, Inclusion, and Community Engagement. And I'll be sharing with you the same presentation that we've shared at our various community input sessions, with the exception of having a few of our sample informations coming from schools that are more aligned to this particular area. So today we'll actually look at Littlewood, Fort Clark, and GHS. In our comprehensive rezoning process, we're focused on our agenda with the objectives, policy. We'll go through the objectives, policy 5120 in brevity, the methodology, which includes our constraints, data collection process, the current school enrollment, as well as sample schools, as I've just mentioned, demographic analysis, and the rationale behind the data analysis that we're using for this process, some additional considerations, and then community input sessions, the remaining dates that we have. So our objectives, of course, are to establish geographic zone lines for the schools within our Alachua County Public Schools, with a focus on aligning our student capacity with student enrollment, and to prioritize our fiscal responsibility and efficiency for the district. So there are several points that we have taken into consideration, inclusive of our facilities, transportation, and personnel, as well as some other things that have arisen in the course of doing this work. Our school zone policy 5120 is outlined with some details that show that the superintendent can periodically review school enrollment, and is expected to do so and make recommendations to the board for changes within our district and the zone lines. The modifications can be made based on things such as new schools that have been constructed, looking at overcapacity within schools, having schools that have extra seats, and being able to look at that balance and the growth that is taking place within the population. Changes that the board may use to justify the considerations of moving zone lines are within these 7 points: financial and administrative efficiency, school capacity and grade level capacity, convenience of access to our schools, safe and efficient student transportation and travel to and from school, our effective and appropriate instructional programs, socioeconomic diversity within the schools when we are looking at enrollment for each school, and then finally the utilization of our physical facilities, and those are our brick and mortar buildings on each of our campuses. And the superintendent shall recommend to the board the adoption of enrollment caps for all schools within our district, with a priority given to the schools that are deemed to be crowded. There has been a change in some of the language from when we first began this process, and we talked a lot about how when we had schools that were 90 to 100%, that they were being deemed as being over capacity. And when we look at the language and align it with the policy, we know that we want to make sure that the terminology is clear and that we are using the word crowded. So any schools that are at 90% or above are deemed as crowded. Once they are over 100%, they would be over capacity. And so we want to make sure that that's clear for the community. When we have considered what things to take into account, what factors play in the role of methodology when we're working through the comprehensive rezoning process, we have taken into consideration the transportation challenges. What are the walk zones when students are within 2 miles of an actual school? Where are the safe bus routes? What's considered to be hazardous for students? Considerations as it relates to taking shorter bus routes and not necessarily moving kids far across from one portion of the county to the other. We also have looked at school capacity, and so noting what the permanent capacity is of a building, as well as the portables that are on campus and the computer labs. And we'll talk a little bit about that later and how that has been a factor that we've had to look at as we've moved forward in this process. And then finally, we've had some discussions and looked at data as it relates to our magnet programs and enrollment in magnet programs and considerations of what that does, especially for our schools that are over capacity, in our processes for zoning exemptions, so on and so forth. So transportation challenges. We mentioned the walk zones, safe bus routes, and shorter routes. We are currently operating and fiscally for transportation at $11,800,000. And so transporting students across our district is at this cost for us. This is inclusive of our bus usage, as well as our gas mileage, the maintenance, what it costs for us to have drivers on those buses. And so we've taken that into consideration. And so we'll be looking at cost analysis to see if there is a reduction in actual transportation when we shift to the new zone lines and move students to different locations. And so that is a consideration. School capacity, we have looked at the permanent capacity, and so when we look at our brick and mortar buildings and we determine what that seat count is within that building, what is the permanent capacity, but then what is the enrollment of the school, to see how many of our seats are available at said schools. But then we're also looking at portables. So we're today sitting at GHS. If GHS were to have, 10 portables on campus, we would need to determine, are those portables owned? Are they rented? What is the cost of each of those portables? If we have space within the buildings, or we were able to move students in the buildings, would we then be able to move a portable in order to be fiscally responsible? So part of the consideration in our discussion has been when we look at hardwired labs, if a school was to be one-to-one, or if we were to have laptop carts for classrooms for a given school, would we be able to then transition that particular hardwired lab into a space that could actually have students sitting inside the building and taking classes within that building? So currently we have 324 portables on our school campuses. 2/3 of those, which is 216, are owned by Alachua County Public Schools. The other third are actually currently being leased. And so we wanted to look at that. And then also in terms of the one-to-one devices, we know that we have 118 wired labs across the district. Right now at our middle schools, they are all one-to-one. We have 4 other schools that just completed the process of having one-to-one laptops on our campuses. But the remaining schools within the district do not yet have that. And then it was a little, I think it was like $835,000 that we're currently spending on portables. There are additional 33 portables that are around campus, around the district, but they're not on a school campus. They're at sites like transportation or Civia or what have you. And then is the magnet enrollment. So when we look at schools that may be over capacity, such as Buchholz High School, and we look at magnet enrollment there, we have to take into account how many students we are permitting to actually enroll as a new student entering 9th grade into a school that may be over capacity. So we have to look at our process across the district and make some determinations as to whether we might need to lessen the amount of students that we have in the initial 9th grade year entering into new magnet programs, and then also what is happening in terms of our zoning exemptions and other procedures that we're following for the school district. When we began the comprehensive rezoning process, the initial data set that we used actually came from February 2023. So from the 22-23 school year, as we were in that second period for FTE, that is the data set that was provided for DRMP. That's the initial data that we used, so the information that the community was receiving on the onset came from that data set. Now that we've entered into the 23-24 school year, and students after the first 10-day count were settled into classes, we saw how many students were actually attending within the district. We sent up a new data set to DRMP to be able to look at what the differences are between last year and current, and then make some new projections and start moving forward with our planning for comprehensive rezoning based on what happened or what the data shows us or reveals for August 23rd, 2023. So all of the data that we are looking at now for this current school year comes from August 23rd. That is the data for everything that we'll be using as we move forward, is coming from that same data set so that we can compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges. It is also important to note that as we look at those data sets, what has been removed from it are those students who are attending private schools or charter schools. So the data set is really focused on students who live within a zone, but they are currently attending a public school within our district, okay? Once we were able to determine those things, we also then made some requests to drill down into the data a little bit further. We moved forward, we're looking at demographics, and of those in the demographic set, we looked at race, economically disadvantaged, which was actually outlined by the free and reduced lunch codes that we provided, and then also students with disabilities, which is not inclusive of students who are gifted. However, if there is a student who may both be flagged as having a disability and is also gifted, they would still be counted in that number because of the disability. So all students with disabilities are counted outside of those who will be gifted only. The next data set where you do not see the arrow in the fourth data set is going to be a continuation of the information that we have already. So what will be coming forward next is being able to look at the individual schools and see where students are moving from school A to school B as it relates to race, economic disadvantage, and students with disabilities. So now I would be able to see if a student was moved from GHS to East Side, right? And I were seeing how many kids in the pocket that were transitioned there were African American, how many were economically disadvantaged, how many of those students qualified as students who have a disability. That is the data that we are now waiting to receive. So our current school enrollment is showing where we are today. This is the number of students who we have, or as of, 8/23/23, because if we look at it as of today, of course, there could have been additional kids. If you're in a school, may say we have, 40 more kids have enrolled since August 23rd, and so that might account for the difference. But as of August 23rd, These are the numbers that you will see. It'll show you our school numbers, then the current enrollment, so how many students are currently attending as of August 23rd, the school capacity, which shows how many kids can actually attend that school. And so then the percent is going to show you how many, of course, of the capacity that we have, how many students are attending, which show us our overall percentage, right? And so are we over capacity? Are we in line? And we can look at that. Are we under enrolled at a particular school? And so that's what that percentage column would show you. And then as you move forward in the columns moving to the right, you will see the percentage of students, even though it doesn't have a percent sign, these are the actual percentages of students who are classified as ESE, economically disadvantaged. It actually shows you by category, race as well, as our zoning exemptions, our magnet students who are attending schools, so on and so forth. So for our sample data sets for today, we're looking again at Littlewood, Fort Clark, and GHS. For Littlewood Elementary School, so on the far left-hand column, it will have Littlewood, and then there is a list of schools. Those are the student, or the names of schools for which students are zoned to Littlewood, but they are attending elsewhere, okay? And so you have Littlewood, this is their sheet. You can see that at the top, 568 are zoned at Littlewood and attending, but then the next line for that school is Parker has 17 students. So there are 17 students zoned for Littlewood, but are attending Parker. The next line is Glen Springs. There are 7 students who are zoned for Littlewood, but they're going to Glen Springs. So when you take the students who are attending Littlewood, plus every student that's zoned there, but attending another school, you'll get down to the bottom, which is 632 students. Those are the students who are in public school in Alachua County who are zoned for Littlewood, but all may not be going there. Reasons for them going elsewhere may include that they received a zoning exemption. It may be that they're in a magnet program. It may be that they're in a functional program at a school because of their disabilities. And so we have to take all of that into account, but these are all students and only students who are attending public school. We have additional students who are zoned for the school, but may be going to private or charter schools, but they are not included here. And then to the right, the far right column, is then what is proposed. So the comparison here shows that currently we have 568 who are attending Littlewood who are zoned there. The expectation by the new zone lines is that we would still have 544 to the right. And then there is a big group of students from Terwilliger, which is about 563 who are in this sheet. Because when the lines changed, it then says that these students are zoned here but are proposed to be at Terwilliger, this number of students. Every single school in the district has one of these sheets, right? And so where those shifts are happening is very detailed. And so in totality, you have all of these students where there's more than 700 on the bottom, but we don't know exactly, even when we propose, exactly what will happen. Why we have to account for all of the students in some of our data sets, even those who are going to private schools currently, who may be in charter schools currently, is that those students have a right to attend public school regardless of whether they are going or not, regardless of whether they haven't gone for the last 5 years. They still might choose to go to their zoned public school in the following year, okay? And so in the proposed zones, we have to also make sure that we are taking into account students who are living everywhere. So when we look at data sets, and you'll see them, we have those without private and charter, and then we also have the set of numbers with private and charter students. Ma'am.
Question, are you saying that the kids that are going to private schools and charter schools, you're keeping seats open for them, for example, at Meadowbrook, in case that they choose to go to that school the following year?
I'm saying that we have to account them in our total in the zone, the total number. We can't just say that none of these kids are gonna come back next year.
But if you're accounting for them, if they're at a private school or charter school and you're accounting for them to be in a public school and they're not, you're kicking out kids that are in public schools and rezoning them to other schools.
No, we're not, because we are actually putting that in the calculation that we provide for DRMP. So when they do the proposal, like this next set of data that comes, we had to provide for them calculations. And in part of that calculation, we have to make a decision that when we do our proposals, like, we have to know what the number is. We can't overlook those students because they can come. But we also have to consider what is the likelihood that students will come. So when we are looking at seats, we have to make some determinations about how many students do we expect to come. And so when DRP does its presentation on Monday, they will talk about the rules that are presented and how that is made, those determinations are made. So we have the data set and we can't ignore any of the kids, but also when we use the rules, we have to look at how many students are likely to come of those students who have been in private and charter schools. So all of it is going to be based on an assumption. Because even for our kids who are currently going to the school, right, they could also go to private schools and charter schools next year. Kids who are in magnet programs could change their mind and no longer want to be in a magnet program. So nothing is really clean because everything is, the decisions are changing.
I would just like a clarification on what the DRP abbreviation stands for.
It is the company or agency that is working with us through our rezoning process. So they do the data analysis, they find the points, they do the geocoding for us. All of that, we are contractually connected with DRMP through our rezoning process. So we are not doing those calculations. We provide the information, the agency does it, and then presents that information back to us.
My question is, your percent current enrollment, I tried to do the calculation and it didn't work. It doesn't work for GHS, and it doesn't work for Buchholz. And that was why I was confused. I wondered if there was some other numbers being taken into account.
So which line are you at?
GHS is 1690 divided by 1926. And that's 87%, not 93%. And Buchholz is actually 113%, not 123.
What I will have to do is to go back, and I can do that before we leave, and look in our email. At one point when the data was provided for us and the calculations were run, some of it was done off of the raw data, and it was changed in one of the sheets and not the other. And we had the corrections made, but I wonder if in the slideshow we didn't change it on here, and I need to go back and look at that and make sure. So I appreciate you sharing that because it become very problematic and confusing, and we don't want that to be for the community, so thank you. In our Fort Clark examples, same deal. Here, 859 students are within the Fort Clark Middle School zone. 75 of those students are attending Howard Bishop. 74 are attending Lincoln. 36 are going to Oakview. 27 are at Westwood. 12 are at Kanapaha. 9 Mabane. 3 at Buchholz. And this is a piece of information that you'll hear later. Sometimes when we look at those middle schools and they have high schools, it's because sometimes those students go over to the high school to take a course there, and so they're counted in the high school number. It's not an error there. And so those total out 1,100 students who are in the zone, and those are the schools that they're attending. But then in the proposed zones, you'll see that that number changes in the green line to 967, and so there is a decrease. For Gainesville High School, where we are today, 1,197 students within the zone, but 215 kids who are currently zoned for Gainesville are at Buchholz, 191 at Eastside. 36 at Santa Fe, 10 at Newberry, and 6 at Hawthorne Middle High School. And so there's a total number of students zoned within our existing lines for GHS would be 1655. In the proposed zones, it would change to 1866. So there are additional students that are added into the proposed zoned area for students for Gainesville High School.
Are you taking into account kids that are dual enrolled at Santa Fe?
Yes, yes. It's a great question. So students who have dual enrollment and are attending here, they may not be on the campus all the time, but we do take into consideration those who have dual enrollment. We know that from many of our dual enrollment kids, they have at least one class on the campus, and so they are actually counted. So when we look at the demographics for students currently attending a zoned public school, this is the same as kind of outline as what we had for our current enrollment, but you'll see that all of the schools in the yellow are schools that we have as being over capacity as of 8/23/23. And so they're highlighted there, but the initial, the headers for each of the columns are the same. It shows you 23/24 school year current, and then we move to the next sheet and it will show what is proposed. You'll see that there are still schools that are in yellow that are over capacity, but what we have to take into account is the reduction of how far over capacity those particular schools are. And then when we look at the actual schools when you look at over capacity in terms of students who are in a geographical zone, how that may actually differ than students who actually attend. And that's why when you were asking the questions about the rules and stuff, that makes a big deal. It's a big deal and makes a huge difference because it can appear to be overcapacity here, but when you start looking at where students actually go to school, those can shift. The rationale considerations that we've had for data that's presented, we've used the 8/23/23 data. And so it's important as people look at that they realize where it's come from and that there was a shift from the data that we initially started with in February of this year. The process that has been used is automated, is geocoding, and it looks at and layers points on the map with the addresses that we have in our Skyward database system, but then it is layered with the 911 emergency addresses. And is taken into account as they are looking at the points on the maps to make determinations as it relates to the zones. So we can show how many kids are in the zone. They can actually look at point by point students who are there. We will not show that on screens because we can't show where our kids are living to the general public, but they can literally look at every single child who has an address, where those points are on the map.
Can we go back to this where you're reserving seats for kids that are at charter schools or private schools? Is there a state law that says that you have to hold a seat for them in case they change their mind to move back to public? Or is this just something that Alachua County does?
We're not reserved.
It's not that you're reserving a seat, but you're counting a number for a kid that potentially might change their mind to change schools from either charter back to public, from private back to public.
So we have multiple data sets, right? And so in the one data set, we have all of our students who are in charter and private schools. In another data set, they are removed from there. And so when we're doing our numbers and calculations, we remove the students from private and charter to make the decisions about student enrollment because they haven't attended. But it's important, what I was trying to, and maybe I may not have said it clearly, we can't take out of consideration though, and why we ask for the data that shows where our private and charter students are is because they could potentially come back. Yes, but we don't hold it.
But we're not rezoning all of Alachua County schools right now because potential students at private schools might come back to private school or public schools. We're just doing this because our numbers are overcrowded as they sit now.
Correct,
Okay.
yes.
Our
assumptions, of course, I mentioned a little bit earlier, is, we're not really sure what's happening in terms of kids who are in charter and private schools. We don't know which direction, but we don't know that for students who are actually enrolled at our schools either, right? We do want to make sure that we highlight that students who are attending Sidney Lanier, Aquin Jones, and Lofton are not counted here because they are not actually set as a zone. Those are students who are actually applying to attend a school or are assigned at a school, okay? They're not in an actual zone.
But my understanding of the programs at Lofton, our children have to apply to those programs and be admitted. So how are they then not put in the raw data numbers for the zoned schools in which they live?
They're in our total numbers, but we don't outline what's in Lofton because they are actually assigned to Lofton. They're-
But you hear my question, right? If you go with what the rationale is for the rezoning, those children who may be in, say, Lanier or Lofton, then show up on the geocache as having address in a specific school zone. But what you're telling me is it doesn't matter at this point for those children to be in the main numbers of the schools currently being rezoned. It's kind of like a circular conversation.
Well, we take the students who are in the actual student enrollment, and we're able to pull the kids who are actually attending Lofton, Sidney Lanier, and another school, but like those kids, or Aquin Jones, those kids, for instance, at Aquin Jones are going to trickle back to their main schools. We don't know when those would occur, but we know that there's a certain number of seats that are typically taken in each one of those schools.
I understand. I'm just concerned and uncomfortable that those children who may be zoned for a particular school, attending the ones identified above, are not in the numbers for the overall number for next year's school. And that can definitely impact attendance as well as supportive services that need to be provided at those individual schools for those children.
So what we don't have here is that the students who are attending Lofton, Sidney Lanier, and Aquin Jones are not reflected, for instance, in the chart to show, but they would be reflected within the zone because they lived within that zone. So they're going to be accounted for in the total number, but they are not charted out because that number is going to shift.
It kind of makes sense and it doesn't, but it's a discussion for another day.
But we will take into account, and that's why we tape them and everything, and we ask the questions, because we have to take those things into account. I mean, this is what we're trying to do, and so if it's not making sense, by all means, please ask the questions or make your comments, because we want to make sure that we're taking it into account from every angle.
And they need to come to the mic.
And as we move forward, if you do have a question, please come to the microphone, so that in the recording, the people can hear, because we can hear you in here, but they can't if they're going to be watching online, okay? There are some outliers. There were a very small number of students who did not have race information attached to their student record. And so if you are one of those persons who is drilling down and adding everyone, it is going to be important to know why that didn't add up to 100 for you, right? And so important to take that into account. And then, as I mentioned earlier, there are going to be some students who might be captured, for instance, on a high school, because it may be, for instance, a student who attends Lincoln who is taking a class at Eastside or at Buchholz or at another school, high school. We've talked about the descriptors, ESE students, and the values that are captured in the field, as well as, the lunch status codes that are used to determine economic disadvantage. We also are taking into account our program and exception codes. We have reason codes that we have provided for our programs like Choice, our Opportunity Scholarship students who are able to return back to a school, our Character Counts program or district programs. It might be related to behavior or other assignments. Students who are in ESOL programs at Parker, Westwood, or here at GHS. our magnet programs and zoning exemptions. So we have to take into consideration each one of those factors as we're making decisions about what will happen in the zones and whether students are able to remain or return back to programs. And then there are some accomplishments that have occurred through this process, one of which is having moved the zone lines eastward. And that has happened because as they made shifts in the zone lines, it was moving more to the east where there was capacity and more seats, right, for students. And so where that availability existed and we had less population, we made those shifts to move to the east. So that's kind of the natural progression of the zone lines. The other thing that was accomplished through this process was parcel lines were actually changed in some instances or corrected. There were some errors in our old maps, and so there were places where the parcel lines were not connected. And so they have fixed those and made sure that those boundaries are in the right places. Through the process, we have looked at what are the implications for us as a school district. What are some things that we might need to adjust or look at as we are making considerations about what to do when we move forward. Through this process, we have had to look at our zoning exemptions, the process that we're using for choice, our district programs, magnet programs, consideration of number of kids who are in programs, how students are enrolled in such programs, what are the caps on those, what would happen, for instance, if a student comes to GHS, say they come here and they're admitted in the health program or, so they're in the health program or they're in the Cambridge program or the teacher magnet, and they're attending the program, they get into their 10th grade year, the end of 10th grade, they decide that they don't want to attend that anymore or whatever. They're no longer in a magnet program, but they haven't gone back to their zone school, they're still attending this school. We have to look at how do we clarify that process and make sure that students who are attending schools to be in a magnet program remain in the magnet program and don't stay at a school where they're not zoned and not in the magnet. And then our considerations. So we know that in the 25-26 year that Littlewood will be coming back as a revitalized school with additional seats. And so we have to take that into consideration. We don't know what impacts that may have. There may be families who want to go to the new Littlewood, right, that have been nearby. Westwood will be returning to its to the portion of its campus with the brick and mortar buildings in next school year, the 24-25 school year. And then we have those impacts on enrollment that may come from our voucher programs, right, from students who may want to do virtual learning and the other opportunities that exist for students in the community to receive their education in other facilities or venues. We are considering all of those factors, and this is the second to last presentation for us. Santa Fe is on the 12th, and at this time, I will turn it over to Ms. Johnson. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Edwards. Very briefly, we want to walk you through our rezoning website, particularly the interactive map. You've got a couple of ways to get to the rezoning webpage. You can see we've got the main banner. We have that red tab at the top right corner. Or you can just go to sbac.edu/rezoning, and that gets you to this page. It has a whole lot of information that's been presented tonight and at previous meetings and other things. So, for example, there was a frequently asked questions sheet that was available at the front. We're constantly updating that sheet. That is available on the district website. You can see videos of previous presentations. You can see all the demographic data that was presented tonight. But let's go to our maps, and you've got two versions of the maps. One is what we call the static map. They give you a general outline, but obviously they're not very helpful if you're looking for street names and other landmarks so you can see exactly where you are. It's sometimes hard to pinpoint a particular address on those static maps. So we also offer an interactive map that is available in English and in Spanish. And one of the things that it allows you to do is plug in a particular street address and add layers so you can see different elements of the rezoning plan. So for example, if we plug in the address for the district office, which is 620 East University Avenue, what you can see is that red tab there pinpoints that particular address. You can move the map around, you can zoom in, see street addresses, you can see actual landmarks that get you situated as to where you are. But one of the other things it allows you to do, so for example, you want to see elementary, and you can click on the eyeballs, and you can, if you want to see something, the eyeball stays open. If you don't want to see something, you click it again and you get a line through the eyeball, and then you're not seeing it anymore. So for example, the areas outlined in dark black, that is the current elementary school zone for that particular address. But if you add the layer for the proposed zone, what you will see is that colored area there. And you can put them both up at the same time so you can, on one sheet, see the difference between what the current zone looks like and what the proposed zone looks like. And you can do that for the middle and the high schools as well. It also has a link over on the left that shows you, that lists actually the proposed schools at the elementary, middle, and high school, both the current and the proposed schools, for any address that you plug in the district. If at any point you kind of get lost in this, there is an I button standing for information at the top right-hand corner. You click on that, and what you'll see are a list of very specific instructions on how to use the interactive map. On the Spanish language version, those instructions are available in Spanish. So if at any point you get lost, hung up, just go to that I button, click it, and you'll see a full list of instructions on how to use the interactive map. So at this time, we've completed the presentation portion of the program. Again, once you all have had a chance to give your input, we have some quick questions that we'd like you to answer that are on that Menti page. You can do it now, anytime you like, and then when we get to the end, we'll kind of show what the results are in real time. But at this point, I'd like to invite anybody who has some comments about this to go ahead and come to the microphone. Oh, yes, ma'am. Oh, yes. Be sure to state your name before you begin speaking, and give me a moment to get to my seat so that I can get the clock set up. And again, everybody will have 3 minutes, and you'll be able to see how much time you have left as you speak. So give me just a moment.
My name is Maureen Latour. I've lived in Gainesville 45 years, and my children growing up were part of the 1983 epic rezoning in this county, as well as all the subsequent rezoning that hit various neighborhoods throughout the years in the 80s and 90s. So as a survivor of this, I have some grave concerns, mostly because we are post-COVID. I'm a retired pediatric ICU nurse educator from the University of Florida. I have read incredible literature that says children are struggling. Their numbers are down. Their mental health has struggled. We are hurting our children. The district is at capacity, I am sure, with providing needed services for every child within the county to get their education, emotional, and mental health needs met. Changing children at this crucial time within 2 to 3 years post-COVID may not be the best developmentally for any child throughout the district. That's my first concern. Very, very concerned. My second concern is I have read numerous articles throughout the year of fiscal constraints for the school board. We don't have enough teachers, we don't have enough paras, and gosh, we don't even have enough bus drivers. And here I look at this map and I see we are going to play Russian roulette again with buses going all over the county. Littlewood is the school that is my neighborhood zone for. It is 1.5 miles away from the school. They are busing an entire neighborhood. I have no idea how many children live in our neighborhood. That's for the geocache. 3.5 miles away. So that has to have an economic cost. That cost is concerning to me. The other thing that was enlightening is that DRP. How much did the school board spend on those numbers to do this process? I understand rezoning has to be done. I've lived here long enough to know the inequities throughout Gainesville and the counties because of the east and the west. I understand that. My concern is the children and providing enough programs for each child, whether they have ESE, developmental needs, or not. So when you rezone children who are in a contained classroom, say at Littlewood, to say Glen Springs, there is no contained classroom for those children. How are you going to replicate the safety net, the programs, and the staff in those schools? That's a huge concern for children. The other thing is the diversity. The diversity is already at Littlewood, and I'm going to go over 1 second with this. Diversity is lessened by moving Littlewood children to Glen Springs. Glen Springs is less diverse than the school they're currently attending. How is that right? That's it.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Melissa Meadows, and this is my son Ansel. Yay! He is 8, and he goes to Littlewood, and he's in 3rd grade right now. So like a lot of the kids at the school and throughout the district, Ansel has sort of multiple exceptionalities. You can see he's physically disabled. He also has ADHD and is also in advanced math. So my concern is, how are these kids with disabilities going to do in terms of having to switch up their entire care teams? For people who aren't aware, a lot of these kids, we have a huge IEP team that we work with. They know us, they know Ansel, they know his needs at this point, and to switch that up is going to be extremely disruptive and require, not just for the kids, but a lot of time on the part of the parents and on the part of each member of these teams. We have physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy. We have an advanced math teacher. We have, the assistant principal, the classroom teacher. I'm sure I'm forgetting some people. But we have this big team, and just to switch that up as he's going into 4th grade would be really hard. I saw on the district website that kids going into 5th, 8th, and 12th grade will be able to apply to stay at their same school that they're in now. And I just wondered if there will be a similar process for children who have disabilities and have probably arguably bigger concerns than just I have to leave my school for my last year. So I wonder if you guys could address that.
Tonight, we won't dialogue with that, but staff is taking note of that, okay? And that's something we can follow up with them with.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. You can raise that back up. You can raise it back up, the first speaker. Yep.
There we go. That works a little better. Hi, I'm Chris Rader. I'm actually Ansel's dad, and wanted to just share part of our family that's maybe a little more typical, which is just that we do live 5 minutes from Littlewood, right around the corner from there. And it's like a lot of folks in our neighborhood, we got to be at work at 8 and we're done at 5. That's the UF hours, right? By which a lot of the town runs. Right now, we can leave the house, get there, drop them off, and be on campus, all good. Making the drive up to the new school, because this is a ridiculous district. The Glen Springs thing looks like spaghetti across the center of town, is going to require half an hour because we have to go through other school districts, other school zones to get there. Unfortunately, we don't have that extra half hour. That half hour is only going to be able to come from one place. That's Ansel's sleep. he's going to have to get up half an hour earlier every morning. These kids need 9 to 12 hours of sleep every day to be able to function. And I don't know how he's going to do if he loses another half hour. We're already pushing it right up to 8:30 or 9 o'clock trying to get our homework done at night. And we don't have the extra time to spare, especially to drive him from one school that is supposed to be over capacity now, but really is providing him very well, to another school that, when this redistricting happens, is also going to be over capacity, right? Anyway, those are my concerns.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, my name is Candace Chen. Yeah, I don't speak in these things. Okay, so I just wanted to share my experience that I've had with my son. He went to Terwilliger Elementary for 4 years. It wasn't a very good experience for him. He dealt with bullying, he fought back, we had behavioral problems. So me and my husband just went and bought a house in the summertime to be zoned for Meadowbrook, which is just about 7 minutes away from where we live. This is my first meeting here because originally we were zoned to still be at Meadowbrook, but now we're zoned to go right back to Terwilliger. Now my son's gonna be able to finish out the school year here at Meadowbrook if it doesn't go in effect until next year, but I have a daughter who's just about to start school. And I'm not happy because Terwilliger, I don't know how the grade's gonna end up being later, but right now it's a D-rated school. Meadowbrook is a B-rated school. I wanted to send my children to a better school. That's the whole reason I bought another house. I like that it's close to where we live. I mean, my son, just for example, last year went through 3 different teachers. They could not keep the same teacher. They never had a bus driver. I like to be closer to the school where my son's going, and I want him to have a better education. I mean, is it too late to vote on this? Has it already been sealed and decided?
We have our first reading on Tuesday, the 17th, so this is not final.
Okay, I don't think any of the parents in my neighborhood are aware of this. I don't see any of them here. I just found out about this myself because my neighbor told me. So I'm gonna share this with all the other parents. I mean, how can we vote on this? Is it gonna be on the website? Do they just need to come to the meetings?
The citizens don't vote, it will be the board members that vote, okay?
In December? We'll have a chance to vote, maybe?
The citizens don't, we're receiving public input
So
now.
we don't have
and
any-
citizen input, yeah, so the board members will vote on this policy change.
So do you vote based on the input you get here? Is there any way
It's
to?
a whole lot of things. I mean, we can't please everyone, and we're trying to compile information from the citizens of Alachua County. Staff will go back and work with the consultant, with the GIS consultant.
Can we get petitions? Is there any way that us individual parents can have an input?
We're listening to
Just
parents
this?
now.
Okay,
We're
this
listening
is
to
about all we
parents
can do.
now.
Okay, well, thank you for listening to me.
Okay. Thank you for coming.
Hi, Donna Tuckey, and I'm a grandmother and an activist. 61% of intersection crashes in the U.S. involve left turns, and it is estimated that 20% of those crashes involve fatalities. The intersection of 64th Street and 39th Avenue is an unguarded intersection with 4 lanes of traffic going 45 miles per hour and a nearly impossible sight line coming eastbound, approaching the top of a ridge. I know of 2 fatalities that have happened in this intersection. After several near misses myself, I will not make a left turn there. With your proposed rezoning, you are asking the parents of Summer Creek and Greystone students to make a left turn from 64th Street onto 39th Avenue in rush hour traffic going east to Talbot Elementary. You are asking the parents of the students of the new apartment complex, Terra St. Augustine, rezoned to Meadowbrook, to make a left turn at the same intersection at the same time that Summer Creek and Greystone parents are also turning left. Well, how about the bus? Would you send the little tykes across 39th Avenue so they're they're going the right way, eastbound and westbound? Or would you have the bus driver make a U-turn on one of the busiest streets in the city? In addition to the obvious transportation problems, you will create after-school emergencies that are very detrimental to some of the children that are being rezoned. For instance, many children who are at Meadowbrook, a couple right there, catch the bus to Sun Country for their after-school care and specialty programs. Sun Country does not pick up at Talbot Elementary. What are your solutions? EDEP programs are full, after-school programs are full at all of these schools. The number of children in Summer Creek and Greystone is negligible. How many kids of elementary school age are in those two subdivisions? 15, 20, maybe? And you're leaving Meadowbrook at 70% capacity. For what? For a quarter of a mile? For 20 kids? In this particular case, this rezoning line only benefits Dan Newlin. And in your wake, you endanger and upset little lives and make it harder for the bus drivers who are so vital to this public school system. And don't forget the working parents. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
Good evening. My name is Allison Moss. I'm a resident of Suburban Heights, and I also am part of a one-car household. We choose to have one car and an e-bike and make our lives work with biking and walking, and we specifically chose the neighborhood of Suburban Heights to be located close enough to Littlewood Elementary School. Additionally, my husband and I, who's in the audience, just taught our daughter, who's 4 years old, to learn a bike, and I was excited for the prospect of biking to Littlewood with her on my way to work every day. This change, if in effect, will transform our 1.4 mile potential bike commute into a 4.1 mile car commute. We won't be eligible for bus service, so that's another private vehicle on the roads creating congestion at school hours. My concerns regard environmental sustainability, as I've already mentioned, and the social impacts to kids not being able to go to school essentially in their neighborhood. In my opinion, I understand the principle of needing to rezone, especially eastward, with the way that Alachua County has developed. The district for Littlewood, or the zoning for Littlewood specifically, looks like a congressional gerrymander job. It's just comically long and circuitous and not related to the neighborhoods it serves. Regarding the policies that were shown on the slides, there's a policy 5120 that involves convenient access to schools. So I've already made the case our access will be markedly less convenient, and safe and efficient student transportation and travel. So I happen to be a transportation professional by trade, and I know all of the intersections, the signalized intersections we would have to cross if we wanted to do them on foot or on bike, and I would not feel comfortable doing that with my daughter. Another slide showed walk zones, safe bus routes, shorter bus routes. All of those, again, are antithetical with the zoning specific for Littlewood. I would ask that since Littlewood is slated to be reconstructed soon, that we could consider adding some more portables for the interim solution and building a slightly bigger school, and maybe shifting the alignment and the zoning slightly, but in a more sensible way, not in a way that looks, like I said, like a gerrymander job. Lastly, two questions that you may not be able to answer at this moment, but I was wondering if this input will really be considered in the board's decision, or if the process is fairly resolved. And lastly, what the process might be for seeking an exemption to the zoning, as it is a particular hardship for me and my family. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Lan Wei up here. So This is the first time I attend this community input, and then because recently I'm with the lady over here that we just got zoned to Twigler, which is the elementary school that we don't prefer. And I'm not a long-term Gainesville resident like this lady who's been here for 40 years. I moved here only 3 years ago, but I came from New York, who's highly valued high-quality education. And I take it really vital to put my kids in a good school for them to get good education. And ironically, I have two children who are on the extreme spectrum of one with the ESE, one is with EP. So I purchased the house where we are right now because I have to find a good school for my children with special needs. And now I'm not talking about, complaining about anything. I do understand the necessity for rezoning, but this is actually the first time I look at the data here that the overcapacity and also the undercapacity, the distribution has not been changed. Also, you presented here as well. So some are overcapacity, some are undercapacity. After rezoning, it's still the same. But I don't really know why, if you're thinking about balancing everything, why it's still not a balanced. It's still statistically, it's probably the similar distribution. Or if you have any statistics showing that it's been shown that it's been changed, that is less, variability, there's less undercapacity, less overcapacity, okay, we would like to see that. That's the first thing. The second thing is that the only thing that I don't see here is the gifted program. How many children in gifted program will be rezoned into different school? Because one of my kids in the gifted program, I would like to make sure the gifted programs you get into is really for gifted. And then the third one is probably the most important one, that's actually not for myself, for everyone, is that only rezoning the students does not help. I think whether the county has any, or whether the district has any plan, or what's your plan to actually increase the teaching quality, or increase the quality of the overall the faculties, or to make sure that the children are getting the good education. There was a wide range of the band from, B grade or to C grade to D grade. There was faculties make a really huge difference. I am an educator myself. I know how much difference I can make. And I devote all my life to educate my students. So I really think it's very vital that I would like to see what's the plan from the district to actually maybe if you would like to convince us that after rezoning, Twigler is going to be a great school, then what is your data? What is your faculty, what's the statistic in your faculty that can show us to convince us that we will go. Otherwise, you're going to flood, most of the faculty, most of the families going to flood the magnet program. They're going to try to get out as fast as they can. And then the rezoning is pointless. One of the schools that you want to people to go to, still nobody wants to go there. So you have to show the data to convince us that we want to go there. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hi, my name's Carissa. One thing I wanted to bring up, because I know it's probably just a numbers game at this point, but my neighborhood, Carissa. Rock Creek neighborhood, you've split up the lower, we have one way in and one way out, the lower loop and the upper loop. One's zoned for Littlewood still, and the other one's getting zoned to Glen Springs. One doesn't make sense. We ride share. It's going to affect people selling and buying homes. So I think that should be addressed. The other things, again, I know it's a numbers game, so I don't know if any of you guys ever are over by Glen Springs when it's pickup or drop-off time. It is horrid. There is only one way going both ways. Whenever it is school drop-off or let-out, traffic completely comes to a standstill. So if you're going to take Suburban Heights and they're all going to drive, that's going to make more congestion. There's no crossing guards currently, so I want to know, are you guys thinking about that? Are you thinking about buses? Are you thinking about how to do it? Because at Westwood, or not West, Littlewood, where we're zoned, families can park at the park and walk over to help with congestion. There's nowhere to go for Glen Springs. And so I think that's something that needs to be also thought of and addressed, not just where do the numbers go, but how are you going to deal with traffic? Because again, it's going to be more than 30 minutes. It's going to be awful. I was at that school for 2 years before we went to Littlewood, so I know personally how it's what it's like. And the last one is for kids, like I have a kid who's in multi-age at Littlewood, and it's the only school that's left doing that. And so are there anything addressing that, or just, nope, we gotta leave and we miss out on that opportunity? So, thank you.
Thank you, Carissa.
Hi, my name is Valerie, and I live in the Suburban Heights neighborhood, and my husband and I specifically bought our house in the Suburban Heights neighborhood to go to Littlewood for the multi-age program, for the diversity. My children are mixed-race children, and so we wanted them to go to a school where they could see people who looked like them. Our other problem is, you said in the school board policy 5120, the convenience of the access to the schools. Right now, my child can bike the 2 miles from my door to Littlewood. I'm not sending her to bike to Glen Springs, that's 4 miles, crossing major roads, and it's deadly for her. She'd be 10, you can bike? No, you can't, I'm sorry, so now I have to drive you. The 15-minute drive will now be an hour, so that means I have to leave my house, school starts at 7:45, final bell, so 7:30, so you're leaving the house at 6:30 in the morning to get the kids to school on time? What time do they wake up? I don't like waking up before 5. I let them sleep till 7. You can sleep till 7 and then we will go. Because it takes 10 minutes. We can get there. You can eat your breakfast in the car. You need the most sleep you can need. I have a kindergartner in multi-age. He's going to have to switch out of that, and that is a program that we have done with my daughter already that's foundational for her. And now he's going to have to be removed from that because there's no guarantee that I can get that exception. And then the transportation, okay, so we're not going to drive, we're going to take the buses. There were 9 buses late today for Alachua County students, in the morning and in pickup. How can you guarantee that my child will be picked up to go to school or come home from school? And if they're not picked up, I have to arrange transportation to come and get them, on top of everything else that I am doing to provide for my family. So where's that guarantee? And then where would the bus stop be? On 43rd? On 8th? You can't put buses through our neighborhood because of the roundabout, so where would they go? I'd have to drive them a mile to go to the bus stop, or can I just take them the 2 miles to their school? It does not make sense to move our neighborhood, but not Landmark Hills below us. They didn't get rezoned, and they have, so it is kind of a weird gerrymandering thing, and the buses aren't reliable now, so I can't do that, which adds to I'm gonna have to get another vehicle to take my kids, because my husband is gonna start traveling with his job, so he's gonna be in Orlando with the one vehicle that we have, so I have to buy another vehicle to get my kids to school when they can just ride their bikes to school. It's there. It does not make sense to rezone Suburban Heights out of Littlewood. It's our neighborhood school. It's what it's always been, is Littlewood.
Thank you. If you could give us your first and last name, please.
Sure. My name's Renee Rogers. I am a nurse practitioner at Shands. My husband works at UF. We used to live on the north side of town, almost to Alachua. We relocated about a year ago specifically for school zoning. We wanted to be more involved with our kids. I didn't grow up with a mom who was able to be involved with school, doing school activities, helping out in the classroom, that kind of thing. We relocated specifically to be involved with the classroom and to volunteer at school and to do all of those things. I think that successful kids are, partially it's the school, but a bigger chunk of that is parent involvement and their investment in their kids. And we are only a mile away from Littlewood, and obviously it's very close to UF and Shands. We selected that for that reason. And to be told now, we haven't gone to any of these meetings because we've not been impacted until now. We thought, oh, my house is only a mile away from Littlewood. There's no way I'm going to be impacted by this. And so to be impacted by this in this big of a way is really upsetting. My son is in gifted, so to understand why gifted isn't included in these numbers, to understand why, what it's going to look like if there is a transition to Glen Springs, what kind of resources he's going to have. I echo with Maureen and Valerie, obviously the transportation issues of getting over there, working at Shands and UF. We carpool, we're one car house too, and so for all of us to haul over there. I have an incoming kindergartner next year who will then go to Glen Springs as well. You know, the idea of her riding the bus as a kindergartner, or us, you know, if the bus is even offered or whatever that's going to look like next year, you know, that's a little bit scary too. And I think there are a lot of other parents that are in the same position, you know, the transportation issue. But I think, you know, that the main thing is continuity for our kids, especially those kids with special needs. Having a gifted kid, he's super smart, but he's also very sensitive and has a hard time with transitions. And I think all kids are like that to some extent. And the idea of Littlewood expanding capacity in the future, but making this change now and maybe we can go back later, that's really upsetting. Why do this now? Why not wait? Why not wait until the dust settles after the school has expanded to make this kind of change, especially to a neighborhood that's just a mile away? It doesn't make sense. So.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers.
Hi, I'm Laura Fromm, and I was at the Kannapolis meeting last week, and maybe I was being naive, and we were trying to do the right things with the school capacity at a reasonable level, but after seeing the new maps and the new zones, I was at a loss, and I'm kind of losing faith in this whole process. Can you explain to me and to these beautiful children over here why they have to move from their beloved Meadowbrook and start over? And then kids from Littlewood and Glen Springs are now somehow, and with this little zone right here, they are going to go to Meadowbrook. And then my kids who live closer to Meadowbrook are going to Talbot. And it just doesn't make any sense. Explain to them why they're moving from a school who will, with the new proposed zones, be at a 70% capacity, Meadowbrook. And then they're going to go to Talbot, who's now going to be at 92%, which, according to you guys, is overcrowded. That's already what they have. And they love it. It just, again, it doesn't make any sense. Explain to them why it's now going to take 20 minutes or more to get through the traffic to their newly zoned school of Talbot. When it takes 7 minutes, 7 minutes on a bad day, 5 minutes if, you know, we don't get caught behind the bus, but it takes 5 minutes to get to Meadowbrook. Explain to us why the people who live closer to Talbot, again, now they're going to Meadowbrook, and everybody's taking left turns on 39th Avenue, which is kind of a gauntlet. Explain to us the busing, how that's going to work, because right now our bus stop is on 39th Avenue, going west to get to Meadowbrook, but you still have to be on that side of the road, and then the bus is going to do what, a U-turn somewhere on 39th Avenue to turn around and go to Talbot? I really do think that we've gravely overlooked a lot of the issues that are going to happen, and especially on that 39th Avenue corridor. Like, if you look at the lines, like you guys stopped our Meadowbrook right here on the north side of 39th Avenue, you've stopped it right at my neighborhood, and there's not that many kids in our neighborhoods. At the very least, the small established neighborhoods like Summer Creek and Greystone and Huntington, they need to just maintain that Meadowbrook as their school, because not only is it easier to get there, but again, Meadowbrook's going to be at 70% capacity, and I don't know if we're accounting for kids that might at some point be in an apartment that's developed, but we want to stay at Meadowbrook because it's safer for my kids. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. I'm Christy Stone. I stand here before you tonight to represent not only my 6-year-old daughter, but also over 100 residents of my neighborhood, Huntington. We stand united in opposition to the proposed school rezone that would shift our children from Meadowbrook to Talbot. This is a collective concern, all of which is documented in this petition. We firmly believe that this rezone could have detrimental effects on our children, disrupting their routines, friendship, emotional stability, and potential affecting their academic performance and social integration. The neighborhoods currently zoned for Talbot align with Westwood Middle School and GHS. However, the children from Huntington would be rezoned to Talbot would once more separate their friends, since our neighborhood is zoned for Fort Clark Middle School and the Buholtz. This highlights an adverse effect of the potential rezoning of the children's social relationships and well-being. This stresses the need for thoughtful consideration on these children's overall welfare and social connections. Moreover, this marks the third occasion our neighborhood Huntington has faced upsetting proposed prospects of a rezone. Previous experience have left us wary as we have witnessed the disruptive impacts these changes have had on our community and the children involved. Adding to our concerns, this potential rezone could indeed harm our property values, a factor that has a significant bearing on our residents' financial stability and the desirability of our neighborhood. We question the need of reducing zoning limits for Meadowbrook. If new developments are expected to bring additional students, we propose relocating the new incoming students and allowing established children and families to remain where they begin their educational journey. We implore the school board to consider the lasting effects of their decision on our children's well-being, our sense of community, and our homeowners' investments. In conclusion, we stand united against the proposed rezone, advocating for the preservation of our community and the well-being of our children. We urge the school board to reconsider this decision and to prioritize the stability and prosperity of our neighborhood and the children who call it home. I also want to talk on the fact that, yes, had I got with the Summer Creek, Greystone, and Emerald Woods neighborhoods, it is so much easier to get to Meadowbrook than it is to Talbot. Talbot's a nightmare with traffic. Meadowbrook, it takes me 7 minutes to get my daughter to and from school every day. So I hope you guys take that into consideration. And I would like to bring you my petition from my neighborhood along with a few letters from my neighbors.
Would you give it to Ms.
Yes,
Johnson there?
thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stone.
Really wish I would have written something down now. Hi everyone. My name is Alan Kent. I think by my count, I'm the 8th person to come talk about the Littlewood zone, which is absolutely ridiculous. Like, it really needs to be looked at. It doesn't make sense to take kids out whose parents walk them to school right down the street to take them out of that zone. It makes no sense to split an entire neighborhood in half that only has one entrance and send those kids to 2 different schools. So that's just my plea as someone who lives in Littlewood, who will still be going to Littlewood, to re-look at that zone. It just does not look like it lines up with the stated goals of this rezoning. On that note, number 2, these overcrowding and overcapacity percentages someone's already brought this up, don't really seem to change at all. There's a number of schools that are under capacity that are within a 2 to 3 minute drive of schools that are under capacity. So these lines don't seem to make a whole lot of sense in terms of accomplishing the stated goals of the school board, of the committee, whoever it happens to be. So this entire process has kind of been a mess from the beginning. I know the first data that was presented was not presented well. They didn't have a lot of answers to the questions that they brought to the table. I just want to plead to you folks that you guys have the decision-making power here. You have the ability to make a decision, but it's about all of our kids. So I really push you to push back on the things that these people, the information they're giving you, look for discrepancies, look for ways to question the things, and to make sure it really is accomplishing the goals that are being set out. Because from my perspective, and it sounds like a lot of people's perspective, it's just not doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kent, for coming.
Hi, my name's James Wingert. My wife did a lovely job talking about our issues with the Littlewood district. I think that's the main district people have been talking about tonight. It's just patently ridiculous. If you look at it on a map, it doesn't pass the smell test. You know, schools should primarily be driven by proximity, in my view. There's obviously other considerations, but none of this stuff justifies that kind of a spaghetti mess. Yeah, so our entire Suburban Heights neighborhood is going to be taken out of the Littlewood zone. That's where my wife went to school. She grew up here. She was a Littlewood Lion, and she's really wanted her daughter to go there. Like I said, we could walk there from our door. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of retired people in Suburban Heights. I think a lot of them will be getting involved in school board politics if this goes through. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, my name is Jim Tran, and I live in the Arbor Green neighborhood. So the reason why I bought the house is because the location of the school, and it near my work and my husband work. And now you gotta move my son to a different location, a different school. And my husband is only have 30 minutes to pick him up from school. But now he have to travel farther. So that's the hard problem for my son to go to. And if he pick him up late, he'll be crying. And then like he say, so the kid have to wake up so early in the morning to go to school. What if your child have to wake up early and now he have to move to farther and the time he sleep is less. So he have to wake up even more earlier. So I don't feel like he should move to a new school. I think it should keep the middle road because from my house to the school, it's only 7 minutes. But the other one, I have to travel farther. So I don't know why I have to travel farther to the school when the Meadowbrook is just behind my neighbor. So that is just what I'm concerned. So I hope the neighbor, or Arbor Green neighbor is have a lot of kids. So if they change, a lot of kids gotta wake up early, gotta go to the same one, and then the father too, it's just too much. And the bus have to go all over the place, so, and sometimes they go home late and then they have to eat dinner, do homework, all the stuff that I feel like you guys shouldn't do that one for the kid. Just, they're gonna be crying on the car, oh, why I have to wake up early? Oh, why I have to be so late to pick me up? I hear that every day. Yeah, so if he wake up even more earlier, he will feel like he don't want to go to school. So right now, he good for that school. He feel like he have so much friend, and he feel like he love all the teacher, so he wake up and willing to go to school. You don't want to make all the kids that feel like, oh, they don't want to go to school. You want to make them feel like they want pleasure to go to school. They were happy to be there. So that's all I want.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing.
Hi. I felt compelled to speak again, hearing the plethora of parents telling these stories of children at risk on bus stops, on transportation, on 39th Avenue. And I will tell you, I challenge every single one of you to look at 23rd and 46th every morning before the Fort Clark bus stop in Suburban Heights. It is a miracle that somebody has not been killed at that bus stop. It is smack dab on 23rd. There's middle schoolers. What do middle schoolers do? They're crazy, right? They have their brains are developing. So now you're talking about busing children less of age off main thoroughfares to be determined because of the circles in Suburban Heights. So I challenge you to make safe bus routes. If you're going to move a neighborhood from a 1.4 mile school to a 3.5 mile school cross town. And again, I challenge you to go 39th through Glen Springs Road, through 34th in the morning, and time that. These parents are absolutely correct. It will be a 10 to 15 minute change from Littlewood to at least 40 to 45, depending on traffic. That is imperative to not ruin our psychological and or children's zeal for learning. You're gonna ruin it. These zonings have got to be looked at, not just the Littlewood one. Everyone across the board. You've got to think about kids. And I don't think children, at the heart of the matter, are being protected with this rezoning. And that's why I got back up again. It really concerns me.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nicole Benda, and I have a ninth grader at Buchholz High School. He has had a crazy first semester, and I don't know what's going to happen with his, with where he will go next year. My other kid is in 7th grade right now. He is at Bishop, and theoretically was going to go to Buchholz with his brother. I don't know what's going to happen now with him either. I think it's very frustrating to not be sure that both of my children will be going to the same school. That's frustrating in and of itself. Will cause a lot of hardship that we had not counted on. The reason I went back to work when my kids went to middle school is because I was counting on them both being in the same system and in the same schools and having help with transportation when he gets his driver's license. The reason I came up is to say that you guys have told us through these maps and rezonings where our kids will be going next year if these maps come through. You have not told us what accommodations will be made for them in these new schools. You have not told us any changes that will be made regarding the administrative or teaching structure or changes of the buses. You keep saying, oh, the buses are going to be better, but we don't know anything about those new bus routes. That would be useful information for the public to have to gauge whether or not these are good plans. And you've not told us anything about what the resources that are available at one school, which resources will go with them to these other schools. Those are useful things for us to know, to feel confident that, okay, if my kid is going to be going to this high school that was not doing very well, and he's coming from a better graded high school, well, I've been told that it's okay, that they're going to have more kids going to that school, so now it'll be a better school. But I know it's not just the kids. You can't tell me it's just the kids. And so I'd like to know what other accommodations will be made to make sure that that school is as good as the school he's coming from. I believe in teachers. I have many friends that are teachers, and I love them, I really do. And I know that you guys are doing the best job you can, but I think that some more transparency would be helpful for us to feel confident in the maps that you're drawing.
Thank you. Ms. Bender, thank you.
Hi, I'm Renee Rogers. I already was up once. I just had a quick question about EDEP. So as a working parent, we have one child in EDEP, and next year, having a rising kindergartner, we will have a second one that would probably get into EDEP as well. When we switched schools, when we relocated, it was like fingers crossed, say your prayers, are we gonna get in? And we got in. But that's not guaranteed, and we were told that over and over again. And so with switching schools with two kids, I think that's something that a lot of parents that are being rezoned would like to know, if they're already in EDEP, if that's going to be continued, or are they just going to be crossing their fingers again? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Rogers.
There's only one last thing that I want to say. It's like the other lady say, rezoning is not going to work. What is going to work is the school have to make a better grade, better school, and then the parent will pick that school and move to that area. So then that will be work it out. But if you rezoning, they're going to go do the same thing. They're going to pick that area. They're going to go to the good school that they want to for their kid to have a better future. So that's the last thing.
And we appreciate you all coming out tonight, listening to the presentation. We have now this short survey, if you would. If you could scan the QR code, or you could enter the website, menti.com. Eitan is going to come up and...
Thank you again, everyone. I know some of you have been working on it. You can go at your own pace. I'll slowly go through it. The first question is, who are you? This is a completely anonymous survey. It doesn't collect name, email address, any phone, IP address, any information like that. So this is if you're a parent or guardian of an ACPS student, or if you're an ACPS employee, you can select more than one for that. The second one is based off of policy 5120. We're asking you to rank them in importance. Those are the effective instructional programs, the transportation, demographic breakdowns, school enrollment, matching school capacity, and financial costs of running the district. Then we'd like to know your top question. I believe 200 characters, so if you can fit more than one in there, feel free. But your top question about rezoning. Then we'd like to know your top suggestion about rezoning. I heard a lot of suggestions earlier. If you could write your top suggestion down there. No left turns onto 39th Avenue, stuff like that. And then we'd like to know, where is most of your information about rezoning coming from? Is it coming from the district? That would be the rezoning website, district Facebook or Twitter, board meetings, community input sessions, or is it coming from outside the district, from a third-party Facebook group, word of mouth in your neighborhood, a sign in your neighborhood, something like that? And then if you can zoom in on your phone enough to get in there, or if your phone is going to auto do it for you, if you could let us know about where in the district you live, so we can kind of keep that information together in one place. But again, it's anonymous, so we don't actually know who you are when you put that. We just know that this many people from this area put this answers. And take your time on that at your own pace. Thank you again for your input.
Thank you again. Thank you for being with us today. Keep in mind that this does not get voted on until December 5th. On the website, we do have a calendar of board meetings that are related to rezoning. We have one more community input session at Santa Fe High School on Thursday, and public input as is taken at all of the future board meetings on rezoning. And you'll find that schedule, that calendar on the rezoning website. So thank you all for coming, and have a safe trip home.